What's up, y'all? Today I got the perfect project to do a complextro tutorial with because the techniques that I use are good, the melodies are not good. It's too happy sounding. With that, I'll go ahead and play the clip. So there's two main ways that I think are easiest to write something like this. The first is starting with keys. So here I have one of the Rhodes presets from Flex, where I've written this kind of like happy jazzy loop that I absolutely hate, so don't judge it too much, but this is kind of the idea. And then I've added this second key lead right here, which is the Electric 80s preset that just kind of adds some little flows between these different chords right here. And as you can kind of notice, there's like a space that I've left between each of these, and that's so you can do your like little electro fills and like complextro-y sounding stuff. So basically just don't overfill too much if you're starting with the chords. Kind of leave yourself some spaces in between. Then another thing that can be useful if you don't know how to write complextro melodies is just write any regular chord progression or melody. Then select all your notes, hold Alt and drag this little arrow, which will let you do it like to where it's exactly 50%, so twice as fast. And then you can just go in and like delete whatever little notes that you want to or whatever. So that's a good way to get a complextro melody if you don't know how to write them. Then the second way that's pretty easy to do this is instead of starting with a chord progression, just start with a bass. So here I have this kind of square-like serum patch. Then I'm sending through a wave folder, an OTT, then a destructor, and then a Saturn. So just a bunch of compression and distortion that turns it into this. And wave folding can be really useful for this because it's going to add a lot of like distorted, crunchy highs. But just don't use full wetness, kind of mix the dry and the wet. Then once you have that kind of Reese sub, what you're going to want to do is just kind of select maybe a bar or a half a bar at a time. And then just pick out a couple of melodic samples. So here I'm using this guitar sample. One of the granular samples that I have a lot of on my Patreon. Another granular sample. And then on the bottom half for these orange ones here, that's like my little bass fills or like a complextro re-scrowls and stuff. These are basically all from my Patreon or different sample packs that I've put out. That one's more of like a future rhythm-y type deal. And then this is from Third Wave Dubstep. That's another sample pack I put out. So obviously I'm pitching these packs, but go buy them if you want to. Otherwise, just use your samples or sound design, whatever you want to do. Actually, no, don't use your stuff. Go buy mine. Don't worry. Don't make your own sounds. It's not worth it. It's too much trouble. So once you've kind of assembled some melodic samples, all you have to do is just take them, like chop a little space out of them, right? So add something to like fill between your different sections here. So here I have like this piece, and then I like use another piece here. But what you can do is use the slip tool, and you're gonna basically like pick your different samples out. And as you can see, I'm also leaving some space in between these, like right here to where there's nothing going on. And the idea here is going to be select about a bar or a half a bar if you want to, and just start writing some phrases. And then once you have like your first phrase, you can kind of like switch to the other half and kind of make a second phrase right here. So here I have some actual bass coming into it right here. And then just write a different phrase, not super different, but like slightly different from your first one. To where this phrase is almost like an echo of this phrase. So as you can see, I'm using the same two samples here, two similar samples here, and just a couple different little things. Then once you have that, you should be able to like phrase out the rest of it. And as you can hear, there's still a lot of space going on here. So once you have something like this, you can kind of just go through and like write your entire little phrase set where I have a call, right? This would be my call. And this would be my response. That happens twice. And then changes over here. So in this particular project's case, I used this method where I did this part, the phrasing first. So if you've started with the bass half of it, what you're going to want to do is get yourself some keys, use the root notes of most of your little things here. As you can see, my bass, my sub is the root note of each of my chords here. And I've just written some chords on a Rhodes piano to go with them. But I just like them pitched down a little bit, so I put them down there. So once I've added keys using the Rhodes piano, then I can just clone the notes over and make a supersaw layer. And since the Rhodes are pretty low mid frequency, right, they're heaviest right here and the blue is lighter up there, which means there's less volume up there, I can use a supersaw that does the opposite. So it's going to be mostly high frequencies. As you can see, the blue's at the bottom, which means this is compensating for that there by having strong highs in the saws, which I achieved by just doing an EQ with a high boost, 30 decibels, so pretty subtle. Then I wrote the little key lead melody to kind of fit with what's going on with my phrasing up here. Then once you have that, you can add like some little arps and trills and fills like this. To just add a little bit more flowiness to what you already have with your call and respond melodic loop and bass fill chops. Then lastly, you just have to add some drums, or firstly, this is the other thing too, it's kind of easier to write this for me without the drums first, but I know a lot of people like to add drums first, and that is kind of the way for them to keep the beat. I just tend to write everything with the tempo or the metronome or whatever going, but if you want tips on how to do electro drums, one thing is start with a 4 on the floor kick pattern, so then add a snare on every offbeat. And if you don't have electro snares, one of the things you can do is just take a dubstep snare. So I have this one here. And as you can see or hear, it has a bunch of this low mid frequency right here that's not going to work well with my kick. So if I leave the EQ off, in context with the mix, it just doesn't really work as well. I don't like the sound of that. But if you just add an EQ where you're removing that like snare thud sound of it, you kind of get more of the electro feel out of it. Then once you have your kick and snare pattern right there, super basic, you don't have to go complicated with that, you can just do a simple one. Then I just like to add a little fill to the end of each of the 4-bar sections. Then once you have that, you can just add some hats to go between each of the offbeats. So a kind of open hat on the second offbeat hit and a closed hat on the first hit. Then a little fill to kind of end out each of the 2-bar sections. Then to give it a little bit of je ne sais quoi at the end of each bar, then to put a little je ne sais quoi on the end of each bar, you can add a clap with reverb, which just adds a little bit of pop to it, as you can kind of feel. Then because I am lazy and I ripped most of these ideas from a Zave tutorial that's like 8 hours long, I also added a top loop to the second half and cymbals. And that just adds a little funkiness to the second half of it. But you do whatever you want to do. If you don't like using loops, that's on you, buddy. You can make everything yourself and have fun doing it. It is fun. I'm not making it sound like a bad thing. You can do it all yourself. Loops are nice though. Don't be afraid to use those. Then I just added this to end the thingamajig off right here, which is probably the worst part of all of it, and definitely the reason that I'm not finishing this as a song. This part is terrible. It sounds, there's something wrong with this project. I don't know what it is. I do hate it though. And so that's going to do it for this one, y'all. Hopefully you got something useful out of it. I did, like I said earlier, steal all of those tips are from Zave. This is a bit of a human centipede of information here. I've gotten it from Zave. It's in me now. Now it's in you. As long as you don't pass it on, you got a better spot in the centipede than me, so don't tell nobody. or just don't make a tutorial, I guess, technically by that logic. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for watching. If you want to support this channel, you can do that by going to Patreon. You can do it by going to Gumroad, or you can hit me up for lessons. We can make complextro together. So thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.